Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Wellness for All webinar, which this evening we'll be looking at 5 ways to well-being. Mental health plays a big part in our lives, both inside and outside work, and is one of the domains in our Wellness for All charter. And as we have all our events this week for Mental Health Awareness Week, it's really relevant to be looking at our well-being this evening. So what we're going to cover tonight? Well, we're going to find out what we mean by well-being. We're going to take a look at some tools and some techniques that can support us with it, identify some activities that perhaps we should try to avoid, and think about the changes that we can make to improve our well-being. Who have we got with us tonight? We've got Simon Richardson, the Director and Trainer from Golden Tree CIC. Simon is an accomplished clinician, an expert in the area of emotional health and well-being for over 25 years. And his experience comes from a background in health and in education. His experience is in a variety of mental health settings, and he's got lots and lots of experience with regards to counselling and facilitating positive approaches to physical and mental health. Some of you on the webinar may have already met Simon, because Simon and his partner Sandra have trained over 400 of our people here at Suez in the First Aid for Mental Health Awareness course. I think we've got more than 300 people being trained this year as well on that course. And also Simon's helped us develop this year our driver CPC programme, which is going to be based on more holistic well-being around mental health, sleep, nutrition, and also unconscious bias training. Simon's also helped me and provided some advice through to group on the new mental health training course that we've created with them, and also is offered to help us with some advice on a project that Anthony is leading with the ESA around mental health as well. So very much part of the Suez family. Welcome, Simon.
Thanks, Tracy. Thank you. I'm always kind of, I always feel quite emotional when that introduction happens, and being called an expert. It just sounds really strange, but I'm going to claim it. I'm going to say yes. Yes, I'll have that expert title, and it's been a real joy for both myself and Sandra, a fellow director, to actually do these projects sort of with Suez and see how this whole agenda around mental health has been embraced right across the whole business, from as you said, the drivers through to the sort of supervisors, everyone working on the lines and things like that, right through to senior management. So it's been a real joy to be involved with that. And yes, tonight we're going to have a think about sort of well-being and what that all kind of looks like, and what proactive and maybe reactive strategies can we do to maintain our well-being. And just want to start with this first thought, really, because sometimes when we think about sort of stress management or well-being and what we need to do around this, it's this idea of you need to go home, take a long relaxing bath surrounded by aromatic candles and do an hour of yoga. Yeah, but that's out the question. How about 5 minutes smoking break? And it's one of those things that I think is really quite amusing when we think, well, how do I do these things? How does time allow us to kind of do the things that are good for our mental well-being? I suppose, what do we mean by well-being? What is that? And for me, this is about how do we maintain a level of health that means that we can function effectively in every aspect of our lives. So this is about how well do I work? How do I engage with people at work? How well do I do my job? But none of us go to work all of the time. So there's this huge element of how do I function as who I am with my nearest and dearest, with my family, my friends, the people I come into contact with. How do I make sure that I can actually we use this term resilience, but in terms of a bounce back ability, there's a kind of thing that we face knocks and bumps every day. Things happen within our lives, and we'll think about some of those things that might be happening as we go through this session. Traffic jams, little water leaks at home, being late for something, a family party coming up, other things that we need to do. And let's not forget, we are still just emerging from this dreadful pandemic and this COVID-19. We've still got a fair way to go before we're fully out of that. And that in itself leads to things that we might need to sort of bounce back from in terms of the levels of anxiety that some of us are maybe feeling about how do we move back into that world. Yeah, we're coming blinking into the sunshine at the moment. And I think it's really interesting to think about what do we do? Now, thinking about that 5-minute smoking break, I'm wondering about when we think about our well-being and when we think about coping with stuff, do we use any negative coping strategies? Can I just say that's Homer Simpson, that's not me. That's not an image of me, it's Homer Simpson. But do we do any of these things? Now, I'm just going to let people have a little look down that list and think about some of the things that they do. You know, and I'm looking down that list myself now and thinking, oh, yeah, I've done a few of those in the past. And if I'm actually not careful, I worry that I might slip into some of those things again. I mean, my favourite hobby is procrastination. You know, I will find lots to do other than the thing that I'm meant to be doing. You know, suddenly that ironing seems so much more appealing. Or, yes, I'll push the hoover around, that's not a problem. When I ought to be getting on with something else, avoiding something. So I'm just going to invite people to think about what do they do that might actually be a depleting activity, something that maybe takes the energy away from us ultimately. Yes, it might feel better in the immediate part that we do, you know, that's having a glass of wine, going for a smoke, eating that trifle might make us feel better in that very short space after we've done it. But it hasn't really helped our well-being. Now, I'm not saying don't go out and enjoy a glass of wine with friends or a beer with friends and things like that. We'll be talking about the things that really nourish us. And actually that contact with others is one of the things that is incredibly nourishing and really we need to encourage. After all, we are social beings. We like that social contact. And I think that's one of the things that's been so hard on our well-being over this last 12 months, 14, 15 months of COVID. We haven't been in contact with people as much as we would have liked to have been in this time. So let's have a think about something that might be useful for our well-being. And one of the things that I think is really important is our breath. It sounds really obvious when we think about breathing. How do we breathe? And I want to invite you to join me in a little breathing exercise, just for a few moments, less than 5 minutes as we do this. But I'm going to invite you to think about your posture to start with. And maybe you're sat on a chair, maybe you sat somewhere, but I'd just like you to straighten your back a little bit. Imagine there's a cord running from the base of your spine, right along your back and out the top of your head. Nice, straight, dignified posture. Just let your arms rest on your thighs, your feet flat on the floor, and then just let your gaze drop to about a 45-degree angle. And if you feel comfortable, just gently close your eyes. Now, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath in. And when you take that deep breath in, I'd like you to notice where you feel that breath the most. Now, for some people, that can be the top of the lip, around the nostrils, it can be the chest or the abdomen. That's going to be where you feel that breath the most. You're going to hold and pause at the top of that breath and then gently release it through your mouth and let your breathing return to its normal rate and flow. So take that deep breath in, pausing at the top of that breath, and then release. And push that breath out as far as you can. And then bring your attention and your focus to where you felt that breath the most. For some people, as I mentioned, it's the top of the lip. Others, around the nostrils. It may be the chest, it may be your abdomen. Just allow your attention and focus to settle as you breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Don't try and control your breath in any way. Just allow your attention to focus on your breath as you breathe in and breathe out. Now you may notice your mind wandering, and that's okay. That's what our minds do. But just bring your focus and attention back to your breath once more. Breathing in and breathing out. And as you breathe in, know that you dwell in the present moment. And as you breathe out, it is a wonderful moment. Now take a deep breath in once more, pausing at the top of that breath, and then release. And gently open your eyes, bringing your awareness back into the room that you're in. And I just want you to gently scan how you're feeling. What did you notice about that experience? Was it relaxing? Was it uncomfortable? Was it frustrating? Did you notice any tension in your body? What were your thoughts like? Regarding one of the real practices that we can do around our well-being, I am a huge fan of mindfulness and meditation. It helped with my well-being and continues to help with my sense of well-being as well. To catch that moment in the day, or those few moments in the day where I can just be with my breath. I can just get a moment of stillness in my mind. It's a really powerful thing. And I would invite you to have a go at this. And I'd also invite you to check out some of the other webinars that we've done for Suez on mindfulness and meditation, because it's such a powerful tool. Do check that out and think about, well, what is that like for me? And what was it like to give yourself those few moments? Because if we think about this idea of compassion, how often are we compassionate towards ourselves? And this idea of compassion is again, another powerful tool that we have at our disposal. Now, compassion is about recognizing suffering and being moved to take action about that suffering. Now, I invite you once again to think, how often do we notice what's actually going on within us? And how comfortable do we feel about moving towards that discomfort and kind of giving ourselves a break? That it's kind of okay to have these moments of self-care, because you can't serve from an empty vessel. And we often use, in the training that we do, we often use this analogy of the oxygen mask dropping from in the aircraft. It seems a long distant memory, doesn't it, in terms of air travel? But I look forward to hearing the tale again of what we need to do when the oxygen mask drops down. We need to put it over our own face first before we think about helping others. So this idea of what do we need to do is actually really important. Well, I'm going to invite you to think about a couple of models that will actually build emotional resilience, which will build this sense of well-being. And this is really about us being proactive. Again, we can kind of think about doing these things in times of high stress, but I'm really going to invite you to try and build some of these things into your daily life. One of the things that maybe should be on here that isn't is being hydrated. So, I'm just having a nice little chamomile tea there because I'm needing to drink plenty of water. So there's 5 ways to well-being. What is it? Well, there are things that we need to do. Connect with others. And we know that that's been difficult. We've talked about that. And again, there's some really nice videos that are held on the YouTube channel, Suez YouTube channel, where you can explore these a little bit more in terms of connecting. But sitting down, having a conversation with someone, and actually being really emotionally open, emotionally available. So what are you feeling? What's the other person feeling? Getting that really, I'm going back into my youth, we used to call them deep and meaningfuls. We would have conversations, and actually really important conversations to have. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What is that other person thinking and feeling? There's also another thing about connecting, and it's just that real social side of things, finding out what other people have been up to, letting them know what you've been up to. And something that I'm going to mention a little bit later, but laughter and humour. Yes, we can laugh by ourselves. We can watch something on the TV that'll make us chuckle. But there's something just so special that if we can connect with friends, have a conversation, laugh, enjoy that moment, enjoy that company, it's joyous. And so I invite you to look for the opportunities to connect with others and have fun. Fun's going to play a part in the next slide as well in terms of what we can look for. This old adage of being active. Now, how often do you go for a walk? How often do you go? Well, I was going to say, how often do you go to the gym? Not very often at the moment, but gyms are opening up. We can do lots of things around activity. It might be a bit of housework. It could be gardening. It could be going for a walk, a bike ride. Lots of different things. You will have ideas about how you can keep active and things that you can do. DIY, things like that. There are all sorts of things. Key word though for me is about activity, not necessarily exercise. So this thing about movement is actually really important. I spend a lot of time at the moment on my computer. Sedentary lifestyle, I've got to say. I used to have a Fitbit, and now I set my phone every hour to just remind me to move if I'm going to be sat. So I will get up every hour, have a stretch and a move about, because it's just so important that we get that sort of energy back and that energy flowing within us. Take notice. And this really brings us back to this idea of mindfulness and meditation, about bringing us into the present moment, to noticing what's going on within us and also outside of us as well. Maybe stopping on that walk that we're taking and just taking a breath, smelling some flowers, noticing the bird song, noticing the things that are going on around us. This is really important about living in the now and appreciating the moment that we've got. And then we've got keep learning. Actually really interesting about sort of, do we watch the news? Do we watch documentaries? Do we find out something new? And that might be through things like quizzes that we do. And I've been involved with a few family quizzes as well, where we've tried to do it through House Party and Zoom and things like that. I don't know how successful the quiz has been, but we've had fun, and again a lot of laughter because we're linking to that connection as well. But finding out new information, new stuff, that might be to do with our work, But I think it's important to think about outside of our work as well, things that interest us outside of work. Now, hobbies. One of your colleagues actually in Suez, Chris Bruin, I saw on LinkedIn today, has done this beautiful crochet work. And it was lovely to see that image and that really precise work that she'd done. And I'm sure that she's had to learn different techniques as she's gone along with that. Taking notice and being in the moment as she's doing it. And it's been brilliant to actually look at that and think, wow, that's a super creative part of work. Because maybe creativity is something that we can do as well. And this is something I think is, again, I use this word a few times tonight, but powerful. Giving to others. And Sandra and I, at Golden Tree, we often think about random acts of kindness, things that we can do for each other. And that might be things to do with work, just taking the load a little bit. But it might also just be sending each other sort of a message, a positive message, a thank you, an appreciation, some gratitude around the things that we've done maybe for each other. So we kind of live that, and that happens within our families as well. But there's also little random acts of kindness that we can do as well. Holding the door for someone, perhaps. Making a colleague a cup of coffee. COVID rules obviously need to apply there. And my favourite, when I think about this, and I'm going to come back to this in a little while, do you ever let people out of a junction when you're driving along, and you'll flash them and they'll drive out, and you get that sense of, well, that was a nice thing to do. I just invite you to think about, what does it feel like if they don't wave back? Okay, I'm just going to let you hold that thought a moment, because there's a whole range of things that might be going on. It might not bother you. You might feel a little bit frustrated that someone didn't thank you. But I'm often reminded of something that I read in a book by someone called Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Zen master, a Buddhist master. And he said, remember, everyone's on a hard path. And that really impacted on me. And I thought, well, yeah, that's true. So if I let that person out, that might be something that might not recognize as an act of kindness at that time, but they will later on. Or maybe their head was just somewhere else. They might have had a terrible day. They might be going home to something awful. So my act of kindness wasn't for the reward of the thank you. It was just a random act of kindness. Yeah. Think about the ways that you can build that into your life. And again, I'll invite you to go on the internet and check out random acts of kindness. There's loads of ideas and things that you can do. Sandra and I used to have a random act of kindness tree in our office where we used to be in Hartlepool. It was like this tree that went out as a photo. It was supposed to be like a photo thing, but we'd put little leaves with random acts of kindness on the branches. And that might be things like knock on the neighbour's door and see if they need any shopping, mow the neighbour's lawn, take the neighbour's dog for a walk, things like that you could do, and lots of things in work. We used to encourage people to take a leaf off the tree when they came into the office and then try and do that random act of kindness within the day. It was always a lovely thing to kind of do. Well, we thought it was a lovely thing to do. But I'm going to introduce another little model here as well. And this is by a guy called Dan Siegel. And Dan Siegel's looked at the things that we need to do to actually build our emotional resilience, build our sense of well-being, how we think and how we feel about things that are going on. And he's got these 7 essential mental activities that we're doing. So some are going to link across to that 5 ways to well-being, but I think there's some really interesting things here that sort of cut across and maybe add to. And that first one is focus time. Now we can focus on lots of different things. This might be a hobby, this might be work, and we often get into flow when we're doing this. And flow is a lovely state to be in, or it can be a lovely state to be in, when we kind of lose time. And I know, again, I'll use Sandra as an example here. She often does those colouring books. She really enjoys those colouring books. She loses time on doing that. I took up over lockdown as something to do, a bit of calligraphy. My handwriting is appalling, and I really just wanted to kind of do something that could be a mindful activity. And I can get lost in the flow of actually doing these things, really focused on that task. Now, I'll do that at work as well sometimes if we've got a presentation to prepare, when we're doing things. Again, just the way that Sandra and I work together, we've got the driver's CPC program that we did. We really enjoyed that. We were in flow, thinking, wow, this is really interesting stuff, and we really enjoyed it. We lost time. We've got to be aware of that, because too much flow can actually be not good for us, because then we'll stop maybe doing things like playtime and having fun. Now, one of the things that, well, the story behind this goes back quite a number of years. I got made redundant about 10 years ago and was in a bit of a state around that. And I had redundancy money, and I thought, what the heck am I going to do? And one of the things I saw online was something called laughter yoga. And I thought, oh, that might be really interesting to do that. And I actually phoned Sandra and said, look, Sandra was still working at the time within schools. And I said, look, I think this is really interesting. I think we should have a little look at this. I'm keen. And she wasn't so convinced about it. And but we ended up doing this, going away and doing this training together. And we trained as laughter yoga leaders. Now, this might sound completely bizarre, but it's about laughing for no reason. But actually, there's a lot of evidence now to just say how powerful laughter is, and how that can actually build our well-being and our sense of well-being, connections within the brain, connections with other people. And I absolutely loved it. Now, Sandra was going through a particularly difficult time at that time. And she doesn't mind me, I'm sure, saying this and mentioning this. But she didn't recognize it at the time. She pretty much hated it at the time. But she recognized later that actually it really bolstered her well-being. It helped her get through that tough time. Didn't take the tough time away. It doesn't do that, but it actually allows us the capacity to be able to manage these situations that we are facing. And we've done laughter yoga all over the country, and we've even worked with Google. We even trained Googlers in laughter yoga, which was really good fun to do. And they could really see the sense of what we were talking about in terms of the benefit of laughter. It's not about humor, it's not about cognition and saying something funny, it's just about laughing. And I will invite you, maybe now, maybe later, to just let out a little chuckle and see what it feels like. But that's just one part of playtime. We can be looking at games, we can be looking at fun, we can be looking at sort of football and things like that. And I often say about Lego, and I wonder how many sort of, well, mums and dads out there really enjoy playing with their children's Lego. Yeah, I have a friend who kind of buys things like the Star Wars Death Star. You know, he bought the Star Wars Death Star for his 3-year-old child. And I think, oh, come on, Tony, that's yeah, it's not really for your child, is it? No, it's not. So this play, enjoyed it, but it's like we need an excuse to play. Well, maybe we don't. Maybe we can just enjoy playing. Connecting time I've already mentioned, and we can do that through playtime. We can do that almost within focus time as well. I've mentioned physical time as well, that movement about that's really important. So we can see some connections between this and the previous slide. But what about sleep? And when we think about well-being, when we think about that sense of feeling okay and okayness, I know I feel a lot better after I've had a good night's sleep. And one of the things that I'm really keen on is something called sleep hygiene, thinking about how do I get the best night's sleep I can get so I feel rested in the morning. So I think about things like the temperature of the bedroom, the duvet that's on the bed. Is it a heavy duvet? Is it a light duvet? Depending on the season or the temperature outside. These can be sort of little things that we can do. Those shift workers out there, are you using blackout blinds or blackout curtains so you're minimizing the light? Again, for shift workers, thinking about the noise that's outside. Maybe using some kind of noise attenuation machine or a fan, just having a fan on in the background, because that noise will in the end block out external noise. Quite clever how the brain does that. Helps you get a better night's sleep or a better day's sleep. Think about how often you change your pillows. There are loads of things that we can do around sleep. Again, you get a better sleep if you avoid some of the negative coping strategies as well. So not too much TV, not zoning out in front of the telly, not smoking, no alcohol, or at least not having any alcohol for about 2 hours before you go to bed. So there are things that we can do that can be really beneficial that will aid us getting a good night's sleep. One of the things that I found really useful, I used to work away and have been working away for quite a bit and spending some time in hotels. Earplugs. Earplugs have been such a boon for me as well. And if anyone's got a partner that snores, not saying about anything about the snoring, but earplugs can be really helpful as well. Downtime. Sometimes we just need a bit of chewing gum for the mind. Nothing wrong with vegging out in front of the TV for a little bit and catching up on the soaps or a comedy show, or just doing a bit of time on the game that you've got on your phone or something like that. Absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. And then this thing of timing comes back to mindfulness and meditation again. Really connecting with yourself, noticing your breath, noticing how you're feeling, noticing any tension that's in there. Once we start to notice these things, we can take active steps towards feeling better, enhancing our sense of well-being and purpose. So these are lots of physical things, lots of doing things that we can do. But we can also think about our thinking. And actually, this is really important when we think about well-being. How are we responding to situations around us? Do you ever get bent out of shape over things that are maybe going on within your life? The stressors that we face. And this is a really nice tool that was developed over in the States at Harvard, thinking about, well, what can we do about thinking? And how does our thinking impact on our sense of well-being? And there are certain things that we can do. Is can we change the situation? Can we avoid the stressor? Right, okay. Do we need to learn how to say no? And that can be really difficult. That can be a real challenge. And we maybe need to weigh off thinking about priorities and what do we need to say yes to, what do we need to say no to. But how often are we taking on board too much? How often are we kind of really feeling uncomfortable if we say to someone, no, I'm not able to do that? Maybe it's something we can practice and learn how to do. What about avoiding certain people or topics? There are certain things. I was working, well, my face was working in Scotland quite recently, and I kind of let slip something about independence in Scotland. And it was interesting what a hot button topic that is. So kind of really needed to pull away from that quite quickly. So we need to think about what can we avoid. We also need to think about, can we control our environment in some way? You know, can we avoid things that are going to make us a little bit more sort of tense, out of sorts? And that might be things like, what music are we listening to? I often think about that when I'm driving. What music am I listening to, and how does that impact on my mood? And, that's something nice, calming and relaxing when I'm on a motorway. That's what I kind of like to listen to. Some of you might like to listen to something a little bit more upbeat. But can we alter the situation in some way? And this is actually quite interesting when we think about altering the situation. Can we kind of, well, actually, if I express what I'm thinking and feeling about this to someone, what might happen then? Can I maybe compromise with what's actually going on? Or can I be a little bit more assertive? Can I be a bit more focused in terms of time management? So how can I alter the situation there? And all of that is going to help us change our reaction, which is also something we can do in terms of adapting to the stressor. If we think about, well, can I reframe what's actually happening here? Can I actually see the bigger picture and just explore just for a moment what else might be going on? And thinking about, and a lovely word that I came across in one of my therapy tutors used the term windfalls. And I thought, oh, what a lovely way to actually think about changing my reaction to something, recognizing the windfalls that might be presented to me and picking them up and enjoying them and allowing me to focus on the positive. And then that accept the stressor. And the example I'm going to use here is it's a one of travel. It's a one of moving and travel. And it's traffic jams. And I don't know what your response is in traffic jams, but I always sound like I used to be a really angry character, and maybe I was. I probably did get sort of angry at times and frustrated, and that would be traffic jams. And I'd be driving home, and this was really because I just wanted to be home. I just wanted to relax and chill out, and I'm stuck on the M4 or somewhere and not moving, and I would get angry and frustrated. And actually, does my anger and frustration change that situation in any way? Do the cars part and allow me to drive through? No, they don't. I'm still stuck in the traffic jam, only I'm now a little bit hot and bothered with it all. If I just accept where I am, look for the windfalls and think, I can have a bit of a sing-song here. I can just enjoy the music. And yes, I might want to get home, but being angry is not going to change the situation that I'm in. I just accept it. Certain things happen in our lives. Yeah, it might be uncomfortable, but we maybe just need to think, well, it is what it is. That's not being resigned to the fact that, oh, well, what can I change? I still might be able to change something, but right now in this moment, this is what's actually going on for me. This can be a really tough thing to think about doing. And this takes practice. All of these things that we're actually talking about tonight and thinking about this evening are things that we need to work on. And Sandra and I often use this idea of, if you go to the gym once, you don't get any real benefit from that. What you need to do is practice. In meditation, we often talk about practicing meditation. It's not about getting it perfect. It's not about getting it right. It's about practicing and doing it over and over again. And the more we do all of these things over and over again, the more it will enhance and build our sense of well-being. It will give us that capacity to manage the things that are presented with us on a day-to-day life. That sense of feeling okay about ourselves, feeling okay about others, and feeling okay about our lives. There are times that we need to get more professional help, to recognize, and again, I would say about recognizing that depletion, recognizing when we are having difficulties, and seeking out others and having a chat with people. So the final slide for you is a call to action. I hope you've enjoyed this webinar. We're going to have some opportunity for some questions and some of your thoughts in a moment. But I'm just wondering about what are you going to do? We've been on here, what, about 45 minutes coming up? What action are you going to take as a result of this? And I invite you to come up with your own personal action plan. But I implore you, don't make it huge. You know, tomorrow I'm going to run a marathon. What about the small steps that we can take, the tiny, achievable, tickable targets? We used to call them TATs. Tiny, achievable, tickable targets that you can do on a day-to-day basis that will gently build these things into your daily life. All of those things. Because again, another thing that's not mentioned, because we've been thinking more about the emotional side of things, I maybe should mention this, but our diet, healthy eating, and what are the tiny little steps that you can do about improving your fruit and veg intake? 3/4 veg, quarter fruit, and it's more than 5 a day, I'm afraid, folks. You reckon about 7 a day, if not more. And, I'll say this because this is a big thing of Sandra's, hydration. Making sure that we're drinking plenty of cups of water or herbal tea, something like that. Okay, folks, so kind of any questions or comments there?
Thanks, Simon, for that. It's really, I have my pen out, been writing myself a few points there as we go through. I think I'm certainly guilty of a bit of procrastination when there's something I don't want to do. And I certainly think that my house was always at its cleanest when I was studying and had an assignment to do.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't know why it was so critical that my bathroom was spotless before I could get to that. Just a question coming here, really, and I think something that we've all been a little bit victim of with regards to COVID. You know, and someone just saying that they just don't feel that they've got their eating, under control at the moment, and where can they start really with that?
Yeah, well, I think that's a really great question. One of the things I wonder about this is about mindful eating. Now, I know that I'm a big fan of this whole mindfulness side of things. And there's a chap called Andy Puddicombe who's actually on BBC 4. He's running a series of, if you go on iPlayer, Andy Puddicombe is doing a lot of stuff on mindfulness. But mindful eating can be really beneficial in terms of what are we eating, how are we eating. I would also invite whoever it was that said that to think about, well, what is that eating about? And is it about anxiety? Is it about comfort eating? What's going on there with that? Because we, and I'm guilty of this. I've had a rubbish day, I'm going to have a trifle, and I'll stick my face in a trifle and then feel guilty about having done that. I'm also noticing things about sort of, put a stone on. So again, in terms of where we're at with this, I'm not saying that I'm absolutely perfect on all of this. During lockdown, I've put about a stone on, and I've noticed that. And so I'm making tiny changes in terms of thinking about portion control. I'm thinking about planning my week's meals ahead. What am I going to eat? What do I intend to eat? And I'm really noticing I'm not snacking. It's a really interesting thing when I think, how much do I snack? I've said, how much do we snack? And is that boredom? Are we just sort of looking around for something to do? Well, that Kit Kat seems enticing. Could I do something else? And actually maybe drawing on the 5 ways to well-being, the healthy mind platter, what can we do there? If it is feeling problematic to that individual who said that, if they are really worried about that, I would invite them to actually think about maybe having a chat with someone at WeCare and utilising that, because I am not in any way sort of minimising this for people, because it can be a soothing activity, but it can be one of those depleting activities, particularly if we're feeling really upset after we've engaged in a snack or something like that.
Yeah, and I think our new employee assistance program is much more comprehensive than it was previously. So do take a look at that, and we can share some details after the webinar for everyone who's attended. And we've had Sue Judge on a couple of times, an expert in nutrition, who also her webinars are there on YouTube for you to be able to access and listen to again. So they might be a good point of contact for that person as well. Got a question here again, somewhat COVID related, in that you talk about connecting. That's been really hard over the last year. This is someone that has, needed to come out to work, but still a bit nervous about actually going beyond that and back into social environments. So any tips for that person, Simon?
Yeah, well, I am full of joy and happiness actually tonight, because I've had my second vaccine just this evening, just before the start of this. I would invite that person to think about sort of really checking out the rules. What are the sort of policies and procedures in place, and actually really adhering and following those rules. So all the safe practices, hands, space, and what's the other one? I've forgotten what it is. I should know that. Hands, face, space, isn't it? So covering our mouth.
You've got me confused. It's too late in the evening.
Too late in the evening. But following the evidence base on that. Yeah, really listening to the experts on that, and keeping ourselves safe. I know that Suez have done a huge amount in terms of making the environment as safe as it possibly can be. Completely get the anxiety that people have on that, particularly as they're emerging from that. Talk to colleagues about what you're thinking, what you're feeling about this. But I'm fairly confident. Well, not fairly confident. I'm very confident about the information that's actually coming from the government now in terms of how we can keep ourselves as safe as possible, and be open to challenging people as well. And this can be a tricky thing. And I'm sure this occurs within Suez. If someone's not wearing the mask correctly, just a little gentle reminder, your mask slipped. And people might feel a little bit uncomfortable about that, but again, it's about keeping us all safe on this. And again, I think talking and talking and talking are one of the key things around that. Working through what it is that you may be anxious about.
And obviously masks are required when it's PPE within Suez, but at the moment that's very much voluntary. And I think what we've said throughout is, well, be kind and respectful to other people in their decisions where it isn't mandatory or required under government guidance around masks. And it's just about being just a little bit more tolerant with people who perhaps do feel nervous at the moment. Had a nice, lovely comment come in from someone here that says they love the kindness tree idea, Simon. I will implement that at home with my children, and thank you for these great reminders about how to look after ourselves. If anyone's got any other questions, do pop them in the question box and I'll share them with Simon. We've still got a few minutes.
I invite you to put kindness trees all over Suez in the various different. What about having one in the canteens and the little rec rooms and things like that people could do? A culture of kindness and random acts of kindness. What a lovely thing that would be.
Absolutely. We just got a question here around, you're saying about saying no. And someone here says, they do tend to find it difficult to say no. So they say yes, but then, feel a bit cross with themselves for saying yes when that's not what they wanted. So any tips on just being able to be brave and say no?
Yeah, well, isn't that it? Bravery and courageousness. And I think there's always something that we've got to think. I mean, I always think saying no sounds really sort of abrupt.
Yeah.
I think there's something around that compromise and negotiation that is maybe needed, an explanation. or a slight explanation perhaps of why I need to say no, because of workload, because of busyness, because of certain priorities, and what's a priority, which is taking more priority in terms of the list of things people have to do. But again, I think this is a skill that needs to be practiced, that we kind of recognize what's going on for us. And it's really common for people to struggle with this and think, well, why did I do that? Why have I taken that on board when I'm absolutely exhausted? And I think it's something that we need to kind of practice. And it also involves the person that you're kind of saying no to, recognizing that you've said no. So I often think about the transactions that we have and how we communicate and where we're coming from in terms of how we transact with one another and the responses that we get back. So it's really about holding that very adult space, that very adult sort of place, and saying, I'm not able to do that. I've got this on, I've got that on. Could I drop? I would have capacity to do that if I drop something else, and negotiate what needs to be prioritized. Not just an abrupt, no, I can't do that, because that's going to feel like a child stamping its feet. But that sort of discussion about what's actually going on, I think, is actually quite an important thing to do. You're going to get overloaded. We often talk about this idea of a stress bucket. If you just keep taking on board everything, that bucket is going to spill over, or you're going to be exhausted carrying it.
Got another comment come through. People have to excuse me for, just moving my face away from the screen to read these. But we've had some advice here from someone, thank you, who's saying that they can't recommend meditation enough. It's well worth it if you're struggling. Yeah. So I wonder whether, where's a good starting point for someone, Simon, around that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree for when you're struggling, but I would also say it's an absolute boon if you do it when you're not struggling. You're filling up your well-being cup when you're not struggling is great. There are loads of YouTube videos out there. You can just access a load of material that's completely free. If people want some recommendation about books, there's a lovely book by Matthew Johnston, and it's a little cartoon book called Quiet the Mind. He's the chap that did I Had a Black Dog, his name was Depression. But because he uses mindfulness and meditation. So that's a great little book to use. There's mindfulness workbooks, and you can get worksheets and all sorts of things I was going to say in libraries, but when libraries open up, you can go to the library and look at the books on prescription section. And if you just pop into the library and go books on prescription, you can find loads of really good mindfulness and meditation books with CDs and audio files and things like that. But give it a go online. There's a chap called John Kabat-Zinn. He's done a lot of stuff. Andy Puddicombe is also a really good starting point there. And I would also invite you again, I mentioned this earlier on, but check out the webinars that we did, because I think we did some lovely introductions to that whole mindfulness and meditation stuff going on.
Yeah, and I think you did some short mindfulness sessions. Just one last question then here. We have from someone who's saying they're struggling with motivating themselves to stick to making positive change. And have you got any ideas to help them, please?
Yes. Wow. Tiny, achievable, tickable targets. Think about setting a little goal each day to do something. And try and build habits. I think this is actually really quite important. We need to build this so it becomes habitual behavior. So setting a time of the day that you can maybe do a little bit of meditation. And this might sound really challenging if we're talking about meditation. I'll just say briefly about my practice. I get up 20 minutes earlier than I used to. And I use in the morning to do 20 minutes of meditation, just being with my breath, just getting in touch with where I am, who I am, when I am, and where I am. and noticing my breath. And that's actually really improved my motivation to do so many other things. But it might be that you set a goal of going for a walk. And it might be that you think about, well, let's do a gratitude jar. Simple gratitude jar. Every night I'm going to write something that I'm grateful for, put it in the jar. And this tiny little thing that we can do over time starts to build a habit. And that habit becomes part of us. And it might be things like, well, I'm going to do a menu plan, like these little things that we can do. But I would also say, be kind to yourself if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up if you haven't walked your 10,000 steps every day, if you haven't managed your meditation, because I think sometimes that self-criticism really knocks the motivation out of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Forgive yourself, and try and do better tomorrow.
Compassion.
Really.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask this question. I know we're getting close to time or on time, but it's come through, so I'd like to share it. What would you suggest for someone that is scared of change but knows it has to happen?
Yeah. Oh. That's a really interesting one. Part of me wants to jump in and kind of go, I think we're doing a webinar on this in July, aren't we, Tracy? I think we're actually talking about something about change and flourishing the changing environment. Yeah. You know what? I think the key thing is just to talk about it. And one of the things I would say is have a trusted friend, a family member, line managers, colleagues, and just talk about what is actually going on within you. Not about necessarily about the change, this is happening, I don't like it, but what is actually happening within you. And this is about getting in touch with what we are thinking and feeling again. And it's all about this emotional intelligence, this emotional literacy. And it's about talking. And chances are, as you kind of explore that, seeing the bigger picture, that might help with that anxiety about change. And look out for the windfalls. Look for the windfalls. When I got made redundant 10 years ago, it felt devastating. But so much else has sort of grown from that, that's been so enriching to my life. So look out for those things. They might not initially be apparent, but if we look, we'll find. And I think we've got to look to be able to find.
A little exercise that can be done, by yourself or with teams is around thinking about your hopes and fears around that sort of situation, and just getting that out and really being honest with yourself, reflecting on where you are and what that issue is that you're facing, and just getting those down in front of you, and talking about them with someone else if there's someone else that you can talk to them about. But moving forward, we will be looking at support for people for change. We know at Suez there's change ahead of us. So as Simon says, we're already talking about what support we can provide at individual, team and organisational level around that. So thank you everybody for engaging and providing some really great questions there. And thank you, Simon, for answering them. I'll just quickly, before we close, just have a look at the next couple of webinars that we've got coming up. So it is, as I say, Mental Health Awareness Week this week. So tomorrow we've got a great webinar coming up at 10 o'clock on wellbeing and connecting with nature, because this year's theme for mental health awareness has been around connecting with nature. And we've got a really great guy, Mike McDonnell. I met him a week or so ago arranging this webinar, who works with the Lancashire Wildlife Trust and does lots of work with the NHS around this. So should be a great session. And if you can't dial in tomorrow daytime, don't forget they're all recorded and you can watch them on playback. And the week after, well, we'll be looking at dementia awareness. But in the meantime, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Simon, and look forward to our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.